Marketing and sustainability. At first glance, these are two things that are on opposite ends of the spectrum. On one hand, you've got marketing, which fundamentally is all about growth. And on the other hand, you've got sustainability, which at its core could be viewed as conservation. So how do you reconcile these two things, especially when a lot of organizations have the leadership in these areas at completely opposite ends? Well, that is only reinforcing the myth that marketing and sustainability are at odds with each other. But today, on our guest list, I'm really excited to have Marissa Jarratt from 7-Eleven, who holds both the titles of Chief Marketing Officer and Chief Sustainability Officer. So we're going to get into how these two things come together to grow business. I'm Laura Jones, and this is Opinion Party, the podcast where we dispel the most pervasive myths in marketing. Welcome to the party, Marissa.
Thank you, Laura. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah. Well, before we get into it, I just have to mention the merch, the 7-Eleven merch. We were having so much fun when we were prepping for this interview, going through the website and the inflatable Slurpee costume. Yep. Tell me how that became a thing.
It's called 7 Collection, and we launched it a couple of years ago. We noticed that there were people kind of making their own 7-Eleven t-shirts or even looking on eBay for kind of vintage 7-Eleven uniforms. And at the time, there was starting to be this emergence of brands developing, their own kind of merchandise or licensed apparel. And we thought, well, let's give it a try. And so we started to do that. We launched a couple of collections around Slurpee and, 7-Eleven, obviously, of course. And we were shocked at the response. Consumers were buying up t-shirts and dog bowls and umbrellas and pool floats. Just anything you could think of. And so over time, we thought, well, how can we do this that's a little bit different? We want to build the brand. We want to kind of be able to extend the brand into different areas. And so we started to partner with different collaborators, in particular, streetwear, fashion sort of area. Joe Freshgoods was one of our initial partners. And that has really helped us kind of extend the brand to different audiences. It keeps the brand very relevant, particularly on social media and particularly with the Gen Z population. And I think more than anything, it's really taught us on the marketing side, like this is a path for us to build the brand and also to fund more marketing, because there's a small profit margin that we're able to generate that we just plow back into our marketing budgets. So 7 Collection has been a great hit. We're actually dropping in Cannes this week, an exclusive launch for 7 Collection for people who are in Cannes this week. And it's a preview of our next 7 Collection capsule, which is going to be focused on, I can't say exactly what it is, but it'll be focused on Japanese and golf culture and the intersection of the two.
I love that. Yes, some of the golf-inspired wear, if the shipping had worked out, I would be sitting here in one of those shirts. So I'm going to keep my eye out
Laura.
for that.
Next year.
Yes, absolutely. So you are both Chief Marketing Officer and Chief Sustainability Officer for 7-Eleven. And many times those two roles are not held by the same person in the organization. How do you reconcile that? How does that work in your world?
Yeah, I think it's true what you've said, that at times, or at the surface anyway, it can seem like the two roles are in conflict with what they're trying to achieve. But it was actually at the IRG Summit here last year that one of the IRG alumni made this comment that really stuck with me. And he said that marketing and sustainability at their core are really about driving behavioral change. So as a marketer, if you think we're trying to drive growth, we're trying to drive consumers or customers to do something different, to buy something else, right? For sustainability, you're also trying to drive behavioral change. It could be from a consumption perspective. It could be choosing something different that has a lesser impact on the environment. And so that has really helped bridge what at the surface seems like really competing priorities. And so thinking about, well, how can whatever behavioral change that I'm trying to drive as a marketer also support what we're trying to achieve from a sustainability perspective, at least in the near term, is a good path that we're able to pursue.
How did 7-Eleven come to thinking about both of these in the same area? How did that manifest through the business? Was it organizationally something that had always been a part or a new in development?
No, it came up really about 3 years ago. So from 2013 to 2023, let's say, sustainability was nested in the legal organization or as part of the chief administrative office of the organization. And in 2023, 7-Eleven kind of realized that we were at a point in our sustainability journey where we needed to go from being more compliance oriented or compliance driven to really driving organizational transformation, to embedding or integrating sustainable management practices into the business. And so at the time, I had been with 7-Eleven for about 3 years or so and had completed some work in marketing to really transform the function in marketing. So, or building organizational capability, not only within the function, but also across the organization. And so, the person actually who was leading sustainability retired from the company after 30 years. And that created an opportunity to reassess, well, where should this function sit for the next, chapter of our journey? And we decided that, it made sense for sustainability to fall under my area of responsibility for two reasons. One is the type of work that we needed to do. The organizational transformation and capability building was quite similar to the work that I had done when I first joined as a marketer. And two, we wanted to nest sustainability as close to the customer as possible to ensure that we were meeting or exceeding our customers' expectations. And in our company, marketing is the function that sort of sits the closest to the customer. So that's why we put them together. It's not very common in the industry, as you point out, but I actually think it's been an awesome experience for me personally, but also for the company, because I'm able to think about things from the customer's perspective, from the marketing perspective, but then also through the sustainability lens.
When you put it like that, it makes so much sense. And I love that insight that came out of IRG and driving behavior.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit more about that organizational transformation. I have always held the opinion that marketing is the place to get organizational transformation done because it needs to be intersectional and you need to work with all different areas of the C-suite. So when you came in at that point and you had to transform marketing, what was some of your playbook that you put into place?
Well, it's going to sound familiar for many of the people listening or watching. It's, a classic organizational change model. So we had a shell of a strategy for sustainability. Like we knew where we wanted to get to. Our parent company has set goals for us that align with the UN SDGs for 2030 and 2050. So we had kind of a shell of where we wanted to go. But we didn't really have a deeper strategy that would help us understand how to get there. And so I set about working with my team in the sustainability office to basically articulate how are we going to go get there, what needs to happen. And we identified everything from governance process gaps that we needed to implement in our organization that could help us hold each other accountable and actually make better decisions, not just on the fly in a measurement or reporting capacity, but also from a planning perspective. So addressing kind of governance gaps, as well as just educating and building awareness in the organization on when we say sustainability, what does that mean? Why does it matter? How are we going to go activate it? And that, honestly took probably a year to 18 months of just education, communication, building alignment, building organizational awareness of what it was that we had to go do and how we were going to get after it. We moved into, after that kind of first phase, more of like an education and an activation phase internally, and have spent a lot of time educating our business partners. So our partners in operations, in construction and merchandising, all of the different business functions of a retailer. What is their current impact in sustainability? What is the goal? And then what are some new ways that they can tackle them? So things like innovation and design thinking, like core processes that we use as marketers, but really expanding those across the organization as a tool to drive the work forward. And so, as you know, sustainability is a really dynamic area. So we are constantly learning, always trying to adapt as, the regulatory environment changes, the consumer changes, our business, is dynamic as well. So I'd say we're still in that phase right now of continuing to help build that capability across the organization and really integrate it into how we do business.
That sounds like a really thorough process, really well thought through, and set you up for success, no doubt. So where did you arrive? What is 7-Eleven's definition of sustainability?
So we have a kind of a tagline internally that we use called Good Made Easy. And when you think about it, it's like how ease is obvious from a convenience perspective. Anything that we do, we want to make our customers' lives a little bit easier, more convenient. But the good, obviously, we want to do it in a good way. So Good Made Easy is our shorthand kind of tagline internally that we use to describe our sustainability strategy. And it really comes across 3 different pillars. As you would expect, we have a planet pillar where we look at greenhouse gas emissions, plastic reduction, food waste reduction, and then sustainable procurement of our top commodities. We look at it from a people perspective, so both in terms of social impact as well as our supply chain, value chain partners. And then we look at it from a product perspective. So looking at our assortment, how we're sourcing, what are we trying to achieve there? So yeah, that's Good Made Easy.
So simple.
So simple.
So effective. But yet you operate in so many different places in the world, and sustainability has different metrics and different standards. How do you adapt that strategy globally?
Well, our parent company is based in Tokyo. They're called 7 & I Holdings. So for those of you who have ever traveled to Japan and been to a 7-Eleven in Japan or Thailand or Denmark, then you've experienced 7-Eleven, but ultimately all of those stores are, owned by a parent company in Japan. And they are working really hard to provide flexibility within a framework or freedom within a framework. So as I mentioned earlier, they have set KPIs for all of the operating companies that align to the UN SDGs. So that's really how we get to a global kind of standard of what we're trying to achieve. Where we have flexibility on a market by market basis is how we go achieve those goals. And there's definitely times where we have to get together from teams around the world and have a discussion on, okay, how are we going to align behind this globally? There may be some things where we can have that variability, but there may be other areas where we have to drive to a common solution. It's in the best interest of the customer or the environment, whatever. So it's kind of messy. It's kind of like, the sausage making of the innovation world. There are some things that are very clear, and there are others that require just a finer kind of nuanced approach and much closer collaboration across the different countries across the globe.
So you mentioned a few times the UN SCG. For those people that aren't familiar with the acronym, what is that?
Yes. The UN SDGs stands for the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, and it's a set of goals that the United Nations align to for how organizations and companies can do business, basically. And so 7-Eleven and our parent company, 7 & I, we align our ESG goals to the UN SDGs.
I love that that's the global standard. It's something that we are still using that unites us around the planet.
Yeah.
It's important.
And they're long-term too. So they're designed to, they're defined through 2030 and then through 2050, which, is really important in the environmental space because a lot of the work that we need to do, obviously, is going to take decades to achieve. So they've done a nice job of setting those goals over the long term.
And long term versus short term. Obviously, in the convenience space, that's something the metrics are oftentimes in a little bit of competition with one another. How does measurement work at 7-Eleven, and how do you keep the perspectives of all the stakeholders in mind navigating through that?
Yeah, I mean, like a lot of companies, we are on the hook for our financial goals and objectives. And so, we have very ambitious goals from a financial perspective, and we're operating in a really challenging environment like so many other companies are today, not just in the US, but, around the world. And balancing that with our sustainability goals is hard. I mean, I'm not going to lie, like it's hard. Like there's a lot to do. The way that we've really approached it is rather than trying to figure out how do we go from 0 to 100 overnight, we're really, and this is part of the transformation that I mentioned earlier, we're really trying to help our business partners understand how can you eat the elephant one bite at a time, right? So identify an initiative that you can start in a pilot or a test mode. You can get some learnings. Then you can scale it. If it didn't work, that's fine. You'll need to have multiple initiatives. That helps us balance just from a financial investment perspective as well as an output perspective. I think longer term, I know this is a little controversial in sustainability circles, but I still think the triple bottom line is a really good framework for companies to use. And so it's, how do you deliver your financial objectives in a way that is also helping you achieve your sustainability objectives so that they're not in conflict? You're taking all of that into account. It's truly a stakeholder model approach to how you drive business growth. And I mean, ultimately, that's what we're doing too.
And that's aligned with one of the objectives of the IRG, which is to create value for all different stakeholders.
Yes.
Can you describe a little bit of 7-Eleven's stakeholder ecosystem and how you're creating value for each of them, I'm sure, between franchisees?
Yeah, so we're a franchisee model. We also operate corporate stores. So that's definitely a group of stakeholders is our franchisees, our corporate store associates, our headquarters, or we call it store support center associates. We have our consumers, we have our vendor and supplier partners who, for a lot of our sustainability initiatives, we will not achieve them without partnership and collaboration across the entire kind of business ecosystem. Obviously, we have investors that we have to, be mindful of and consider the communities in which we operate. So that's a really important consideration is how are we really ensuring that we're contributing to thriving communities. We know that that'll help our business long-term also. So that's probably a sampling. And then, of course, we're a global company. So whether it's our Japanese parent company, partners, or any of our operations around the world, those are also part of our stakeholder community.
So you've mentioned Japan a few times. I'm going to bring us to a core concept of IRG, which is Ikigai, Japanese philosophy. Can you talk a little bit about your Ikigai, what your interpretation of Ikigai is and how it impacts how you do your role at 7-Eleven?
Yeah, I mean, at my core, this sounds cheesy, but I really am thinking about is the work that I'm doing making a positive impact on people. And that can be defined as narrowly as the individual who I work with on my team, am I helping them grow and develop in their career or in their personal life, all the way to the products that we sell, the marketing, the seven collection apparel. Is that making a positive impact in one way, shape, or form on someone else? And so that's part of the reason why I love working at 7-Eleven is because the opportunity to make an impact at scale is really there, right? We operate over 13,000 stores in North America. We serve about 12 million customers a day in North America. And globally, we operate over 85,000 stores. So thinking through that lens is really what I guess motivates me and takes me back to my Ikigai.
Wow. That is an incredible amount of scale and your ability to have that impact globally. And I'm sure the brand is a big part of that. 7-Eleven is over 100 years old as a brand.
It will be 100 in 2027. So we have our centennial coming up in less than 2 years.
Getting close.
Yes.
Have you started planning for that already?
We have, yes. We've spent several years, I mean, this won't surprise anyone really, but we spent the last several years just digitizing our archives from the last 50 years. So the first 50 years, the company published a coffee table book, a history of 7-Eleven, all the archives contributed to that. And then it was kind of like we sort of forgot everything. And now we've spent time converting everything from paper to digital. So that's been a huge first step in our centennial celebration planning because now we're actually organized and we can, dive into those and get inspiration for what ultimately we're going to launch.
Wow. Is there a museum component? I love working with brands that have the museums.
We are looking at that. So we don't have the original store that 7-Eleven opened. It wasn't even called 7-Eleven when it opened. It was the Southland Ice House in South Dallas, actually. It's not there anymore. It's the store doesn't exist in that location. We don't own the land or anything. So we don't actually have a store that we could go turn into a museum on the original spot that it started. And that's okay. We're looking at other more modern ways to execute on the museum kind of concept or idea. So stay tuned.
Absolutely. I can't wait to visit once that gets going. So tell me a little bit about 7-Eleven brand, what it stands for, how you're evolving it, and what your process is for keeping it relevant. You mentioned Gen Z earlier.
Yeah.
How does that work?
Well, I mean, like any good marketer, we are constantly trying to understand our customers, both our core customers as well as ones we want to grow with, and even customers who maybe don't like the brand, don't shop the brand. We want to understand why. So we're constantly doing research. We're listening. We're seeing what's happening in social media. and using that as an input to understand how does the brand need to evolve, right? We know that there are some timeless insights that drive the brand. That our customers have told us this is true about 7-Eleven regardless of the decade, and that is convenience, that is, always being open 24/7, which is both, a literal benefit to 7-Eleven, like we are actually open 24/7, we provide delivery, but it's also kind of metaphorically true for our customers as well. They think about 7-Eleven as the language we use is as an ingenious accomplice. Because the brand provides solutions to people who are on their way to do something. And so those timeless insights, we're constantly looking at how do we, bring them to life in a way that is timely and relevant for today. And it's an iterative process. So we are very grounded in the idea of activating awesome for our customers. That comes to life not just in the marketing that we do, but operationally, our franchisees or store operators, we're, asking them, encouraging them, like, how can you elevate awesome or activate awesome for our customers? What does that look like? It could be as simple as greeting someone when they walk in the door, but it comes to life in so many other ways, obviously through our assortment, through the activations that we do, through just, a lot of different things. So, it's never dull at 7-Eleven, I have to tell you, because even though I oversee the North America business, it's a global brand. And so we were talking a little bit before we started recording about all the different, foods and products and things that you can find in 7-Elevens around the world. And so we're taking that in also and trying to reflect that in what we do in North America as well.
I was looking to all of the different innovations, and there is a coffee machine in South Korea. I think you can get your picture in the foam. Is that right?
It is. It's funny. I think this ties into part of our brand story. We've done work around conflict in our story to understand, like, what are the forces in the 7-Eleven story that we can utilize to keep our customers engaged with the brand. And so a story framework is one approach to doing that. It's one that we use at 7-Eleven. The conflict for our brand is amusing versus essential. And the trick is to have both of those elements present in storytelling and more broadly in the experience. And so when you say something about like the store in South Korea that has the coffee machine that puts your face on it, that's such a great example of an amusing and essential conflict in action. Because many customers would tell us that coffee is an essential, like they need it to get going on their day or whatever. But the face is completely amusing, right? And makes it so much more memorable. And so we've heard a lot from customers that one of the reasons why they like coming to 7-Eleven is because, they're working hard and 7-Eleven is playing a role in helping them get to where they need to go and also do it in a way that's enjoyable, that's fun, that adds a little levity to their day. And so that's a great example of how the brand story or the brand conflict is coming to life in a product experience.
Ingenious, accomplished.
Genius accomplished.
I feel that in my own life.
Good. Well,
There's a 7-Eleven that is down the street from our house, and I've got 2 girls, and I have stopped there. I cannot tell you the amount of times I've stopped there on the way for a ski trip, and we all eat a slice of pizza in the car, or after someone has to go to the doctor and they need a little treat, I'm like, let's go get Slurpees, or I just tried the new Mr. Beast candy that I only have seen at 7-Eleven, which was absolutely delicious. And
wow, sounds like you're a platinum customer for us.
I use the app.
Great.
I have all the awards.
Thank you for your business, Laura.
Yeah, like I said, I mean, if I could wear the T-shirt, I will. Next time you see me, I'm going to be wearing the merch.
I can help you out with that.
Okay,
so,
cool. Yeah. But yeah, and it sounds like you have all of the brand elements really well defined, which is so important and a lot harder than I think a lot of marketers paint it to be, right? In a big organization. Is that an initiative that you undertook as part of your job as CMO to get all of those things into place? And then how do you get them out into the broad organization?
Well, so a great example of this, yes. I mean, short answer is yes. As a marketer, and your audience will appreciate this and probably agree with it, is you constantly feel like you're spinning multiple plates. And that's just kind of the nature of the role because it is such a high integration role across the company. But one of the things that we've really adopted at 7-Eleven is this idea of how do we operationalize marketing. within the company, so that it's not just an ad campaign, it's not just an activation, it's also how do we like unleash the power of our associates and our franchisees. Everyone's a brand manager, right? So when we developed our brand purpose, this Activate Awesome idea and the brand story that I mentioned earlier, we actually went through a process. This was during COVID, in fact, during 2020, where we rolled out the framework to our operations organization, really cross-functionally first, but then to the broader operational organization, so they can understand the work that you do connects to this important brand purpose. And I have to tell you, at the time, remember 2020 COVID was kind of a scary time. Like, we didn't really know what was going on in May or June of that year. And that's when we chose to roll it out to our organization over Zoom, of course. But it really provided oxygen to our system at a time that we needed it. And it's been embraced not only by the franchisees, but also by our store associates. And it's kind of become a rallying cry. So I think there are ways as marketers where you need to think about not just your customer and your end user, but how can you arm and build the acumen and capability of marketing across your entire organization? How do you operationalize marketing so that you're using all of the tools that you have in your toolkit, right?
Everyone's a brand manager. That is such a novel idea to think about it. And I've heard from multiple people that I've been interviewing that moment in COVID where big ideas were launched or on a global scale, all of the technology, and just because everyone was on that same playing field of virtual, I imagine that had it not been COVID times, it might have been like a whistle stop world tour and audiences, and you probably would have reached a fraction of the people that you reached. So in some ways, having this hybrid new world that we live in is actually getting the message out and bringing organizations closer together more globally than being only relegated to geography and in person ever was. Excellent. Well, I have one more question for you, and we'll bring it back to IRG and the concept of humanized growth. So how are you humanizing growth within your organization? What does that mean to you? And what do you see as the future of that in 7-Eleven?
Well, I mean, look, nothing in retail happens without people. I mean, it's a team sport. And so the concept of humanized growth maybe is even more important through a retailer lens. So everything that we do, it can't just be about what is that bottom line number. It also has to be what is the impact across the entire stakeholder community. And how are we taking into account what's happening really all the way down at the store level, right? That is literally where the rubber meets the road for 7-Eleven. So we are working on how to do that. I mean, we're providing our stores with new solutions and tools that they can implement that help reduce their emissions or their footprint. But we're also giving them tools that help them drive sales. We're helping them have products in their assortment that have a lower environmental impact, which is great because that's also what our consumers and customers are looking for. So it's a multifaceted approach and answer to, what sounds like a really simple question is, how are you driving humanized growth? It's kind of every touch point you have to look at and evaluate. And then over time is where you start to see the benefit.
How awesome to pick up on one of your words of your brand. Well, Marissa, our time here in Opinion Party is wrapping up. I think that we busted this myth. Sustainability and marketing can coexist, and behavior change is really the thing that unifies them. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me, Laura.
Absolutely. And for everyone, if you want to hear more about Marissa's story, about 7-Eleven, maybe buy some merch, we will drop all of that in the show notes. And remember, everyone's invited to Opinion Party, so please like or subscribe. See you soon.